The autumn rain had turned the sidewalk outside the Crystal Garden into a mirror of amber streetlights. Maya Chen pulled her coat tighter as she approached the restaurant's brass-handled door, her worn sneakers squeaking against the wet pavement. She'd been walking for hours through downtown Portland, searching for a place that might hire someone like her, someone starting over. The restaurant's windows glowed with warm candlelight. Through the glass, Maya could see elegant diners laughing over wine, their jewelry catching the light. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the door handle. This place looked expensive, too expensive. But the staff wanted sign in the corner of the window gave her courage. A bell chimed softly as she entered. The interior was even more beautiful than she'd imagined, exposed brick walls lined with climbing ivy, crystal chandeliers casting prismatic rainbows across white tablecloths, and the gentle murmur of satisfied customers. "Can I help you?" The voice was sharp, cutting through the ambience like a knife. Maya turned to see a tall man in an immaculate black suit striding toward her. His name tag read Derek Thornton, manager. His eyes swept over her rain-dampened jacket and scuffed shoes with barely concealed disgust. "Yes, I saw your hiring sign," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I have experience in food service." "I worked at—" "I'm sorry," Derek interrupted, though his tone suggested he wasn't sorry at all. "That position has been filled." Maya glanced back at the window. "But the sign is still up." Derek's jaw tightened. "It's an oversight. We'll remove it." He moved to position himself between Maya and the dining room, as if her very presence might contaminate the atmosphere. "The Crystal Garden maintains certain standards. I'm sure you understand." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Maya felt heat rising to her cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from anger she'd learned to swallow. She was about to turn away when a voice called out from near the kitchen. "Derek. What's the holdup? We need you to approve the wine delivery." A young server appeared, balancing a tray of champagne flutes. He glanced at Maya with curiosity but not unkindness. "I'm handling something," Derek said tersely. Then, lowering his voice but not quite enough, he added to the server, "Just another person wandering in off the street. They see the neighborhood improving and suddenly think they belong everywhere." The server looked uncomfortable but said nothing, disappearing back into the restaurant. Maya's hands trembled as she clenched them into fists. Every instinct screamed at her to speak up, to demand respect, to tell this arrogant man exactly what she thought of him. But she'd learned that battles like this rarely ended well for people without power. "Thank you for your time," she managed, her voice tight. As she turned to leave, Derek added one final insult. "Try the diner on 5th Street. They're more accommodating to all types." The rain felt like a blessing on Maya's burning face as she stepped back outside. She walked quickly, trying to put distance between herself and the humiliation. But instead of heading home, she found herself circling back to a coffee shop across the street from the Crystal Garden. Taking a seat by the window, she pulled out her phone with shaking hands and typed a message. "James, we need to talk about your restaurant." 3 hours later, James Whitmore was pacing in his home office, his face growing redder with each word Maya spoke. They'd been married for 5 years, but he'd never seen his wife this upset. He said what? James demanded, running his hand through his graying hair. "It's fine," Maya said, though her voice wavered. I thought you should know what's happening at your restaurant when you're not there." James had built the Crystal Garden from the ground up over 15 years. It was his pride and joy, a place where he'd always insisted on creating a welcoming atmosphere for everyone. He'd hired Derek Thornton 6 months ago with glowing recommendations, giving him almost complete autonomy to manage the day-to-day operations while James focused on opening a second location. "It's not fine, Maya. Nothing about this is fine." James's voice was ice. "I want to handle this carefully. If I just fire him, he'll claim discrimination or that there was a misunderstanding. I need proof of who he really is." Maya looked at her husband, this man who'd supported her through her career change, who'd encouraged her to take time to figure out what she wanted to do next. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," James said slowly, "that Derek needs to show everyone exactly who he is." 2 days later, Maya stood outside the Crystal Garden again. This time, she wore the same rain-dampened jacket and carried a worn portfolio. James had spent the previous day quietly asking questions, talking to his staff. What he'd learned had made him physically ill. Derek Thornton had been systematically turning away job applicants and customers he deemed undesirable, a list that seemed to correlate suspiciously with race and economic status. He'd been overheard making derogatory comments about keeping the restaurant's image pristine and had fired 2 servers who'd questioned his behavior, citing vague performance issues, but the staff was afraid to speak up. Derek had cultivated an atmosphere of fear, threatening anyone who challenged him with termination. And because the restaurant's reviews and revenue remained strong, his prejudice had gone unnoticed. James had arranged for 3 staff members he trusted to work that evening, people who'd witnessed Derek's behavior and were willing to testify if needed. He'd also installed himself in the kitchen, supposedly to work on new menu items, wearing a chef's hat pulled low and staying out of sight. Maya pushed open the door. The same bell chimed. The same warm light enveloped her. But this time, she knew what to expect. Derek appeared within seconds, his expression already hardening. "You again." I thought I made it clear, I'd like to apply for the hostess position, Maya said calmly, pulling a resume from her portfolio. I have 5 years of experience in restaurant management and excellent references. We're not hiring, Derek said flatly. The sign says otherwise. Maya gestured to the window, where the staff wanted sign still hung. Derek's face flushed. Listen, I don't have time for this. The Crystal Garden has a reputation to maintain. We cater to a very specific clientele. And what clientele is that? Maya asked, her voice carefully neutral. Sophisticated people. People of refinement. Derek glanced around, lowering his voice. Look, I'll be direct because you seem persistent. You're not what we're looking for. We need someone who fits the aesthetic. The aesthetic, Maya repeated. Someone our guests will be comfortable with. Someone who looks the part. Derek's eyes swept over her again with that same disgust. Surely you can understand that certain environments have certain expectations. It's not personal. Of course, Maya said. It's purely business. Exactly. Derek seemed relieved that she was finally understanding. I'm glad you, business like illegally discriminating against job applicants based on race? The voice came from behind them. Derek spun around to see James emerging from the kitchen, pulling off his chef's hat. 2 servers flanked him, along with a woman Maya didn't recognize. Mr. Whitmore. Derek's face went from red to pale in an instant. I didn't know you were here. I heard exactly what you were doing, James said, his voice deadly calm. And so did witnesses. This is Amanda Chen, by the way. She's a lawyer who specializes in employment discrimination. She's heard everything. The lawyer nodded, her expression professional but stern. Mr. Thornton, your comments constitute clear evidence of discriminatory hiring practices, which violate both federal and state law. Derek's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Then his eyes landed on Maya, and something seemed to click. Wait. Chen. Is she? My wife, James confirmed. Maya Chen Whitmore. She was curious about potentially working here, given how often I've told her what a welcoming place I've built. Imagine my surprise when she told me what happened during her first visit. The blood drained completely from Derek's face. But that's not even the worst part, James continued, his anger barely contained. Over the past 2 days, I've spoken with 10 job applicants you turned away, all people of color or from working-class backgrounds, all qualified. I've reviewed security footage. I've talked to staff members who were too afraid of you to come forward before. Did you know that Rosa Martinez, one of our best servers, quit last month because of your comments about her accent? That Thomas Bradley, a culinary school graduate, was told we had no kitchen positions when we were desperately short-staffed? Derek tried to speak, but James held up his hand. I've spent 15 years building the Crystal Garden into a place where everyone, staff and customers, feels welcome. You turned it into something I don't recognize. You used my name, my restaurant, my reputation, to perpetuate your own prejudices. It wasn't. I was trying to maintain quality, Derek stammered. The investors care about integrity, James said coldly. The reviewers care about good food and good service. You're the only one who cared about what people looked like. One of the servers stepped forward, a young man who'd witnessed Maya's first visit. Mr. Whitmore, I need to apologize. I heard what he said to your wife that day. I should have said something, but I was afraid of losing my job. You have nothing to apologize for, James said gently. This culture of fear ends now. He turned back to Derek. You're fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. And if you contest this termination or make any trouble, we have documentation and witnesses ready for any legal proceedings. Derek looked around desperately, as if searching for an ally. But the staff members who'd gathered, drawn by the commotion, stared back with expressions ranging from relief to satisfaction. How many of them had suffered under his management? How many had bitten their tongues, afraid to speak up? This is unfair, Derek said, his voice breaking. You're ruining my career over a misunderstanding. No, Maya spoke up, her voice steady now. You ruined your own career by treating people like they were less than human. By using your power to hurt instead of help. By making people feel small when they were just trying to work, trying to live their lives. Derek opened his mouth one more time, but no words came. Security arrived, and within minutes, he was escorted out of the Crystal Garden for the last time. The following week, James held an all-staff meeting. He stood before his employees, a diverse group of talented people who'd been quietly suffering under Derek's regime, and apologized. I should have been more present, he said. I got so focused on expansion that I stopped paying attention to what was happening in my own restaurant. That changes now. If anyone ever experiences discrimination or harassment here, you come directly to me. No one should have to choose between their livelihood and their dignity. He promoted Rosa Martinez to manager. She'd agreed to come back once Derek was gone. Within a month, she'd transformed the workplace culture. Staff meetings became open forums. The hiring process became transparent. And the Crystal Garden's reputation improved even further, not despite these changes but because of them. Maya did eventually join the restaurant, not as a server but as director of community outreach. She developed programs to partner with local culinary schools, providing internships for underprivileged students. She organized hiring fairs in underserved neighborhoods. She made sure the Crystal Garden truly lived up to its name, a place where everyone could flourish. One evening, 6 months after the incident, Maya stood in the dining room during the dinner rush. The restaurant hummed with energy, servers from different backgrounds moving gracefully between tables, a kitchen staff that reflected Portland's diversity, and diners of every description enjoying their meals. James came up beside her, sliding his arm around her waist. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about how close you came to losing all this," Maya said. "If no one had spoken up, Derek could have run this place for years, slowly poisoning everything you built." "But someone did speak up," James said. "You did. And that made all the difference." Maya leaned against her husband, watching a young black woman, newly hired as a hostess, welcome a family with a warm smile. "It shouldn't take the owner's wife experiencing discrimination for things to change." "No, it shouldn't," James agreed. "But we can't change the past. We can only do better going forward." Rosa approached them, tablet in hand. "We just got another 5-star review. The customer specifically mentioned how welcome they felt here. Said it was the best dining experience they'd had in years." "That's what it's always been about," James said. "Making people feel welcome. Making them feel valued. Everything else, the food, the ambience, the success, it flows from that." Underscore 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 3 months later, Derek Thornton sat in a coffee shop across town, scrolling through job listings on his phone. Every restaurant he contacted seemed to have heard about his firing. The word had spread through the tight-knit Portland food service community. Derek Thornton was bad news. He tried to paint himself as the victim, a dedicated manager fired unfairly, but too many people knew the truth. Former staff members had shared their stories. Job applicants he'd turned away had come forward. The pattern was undeniable. Sitting alone, watching other people move through their successful lives, Derek finally understood what he'd lost. It wasn't just a job or a salary. It was the respect of his peers, the trust of his industry, and any sense of dignity he'd once possessed. He believed he was protecting something valuable by keeping certain people out. But he'd really been revealing something ugly within himself, a prejudice so deep he'd barely recognized it as wrong until it was too late. The worst part? He couldn't even blame James Whitmore. Everything that had happened was a consequence of his own choices, his own words, his own actions. He'd humiliated himself. Back at the Crystal Garden, Maya was training new hires, a group of 5 people from various backgrounds, all eager to learn the restaurant business. She showed them the reservation system, explained the menu philosophy, and made sure they understood the most important rule: every person who walks through that door deserves respect and excellent service. Every single person. One of the trainees, a young woman who'd been homeless 6 months ago, raised her hand. "Miss Chen, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why are you all so committed to this?" "I mean, I'm grateful, but most places aren't like this. Most places don't give people like me a real chance." Maya paused, considering her answer. "Because everyone deserves a chance to prove themselves. Everyone deserves to be seen as a whole person, not just a set of assumptions. And because," she gestured around the beautiful restaurant, "this only means something if it's built on treating people right. Otherwise, it's just pretty decorations and empty words." The trainee nodded, her eyes suspiciously bright. "Plus," Mia added with a small smile, "someone once tried to make me feel like I didn't belong somewhere. It's a terrible feeling. I never want anyone to experience that here." As the training session continued, Maya caught her reflection in one of the restaurant's many mirrors. She looked different than she had that rainy day months ago, more confident, more purposeful. The humiliation she'd experienced had transformed into determination. The pain had become fuel for something better. That evening, as the last customers filtered out and the staff began closing routines, James found Maya in the office, reviewing applications for their next hiring cycle. "You're going to hire all of them, aren't you?" he teased. "We need the help," Mia said with a grin. "Business is good." "Business is great," James corrected. He pulled up a chair beside her. "Do you remember what you told me the night after Derek kicked you out? That we needed to talk about your restaurant? Before that. You said that you'd been walking around all day, trying to find a place that might hire someone like you. Someone starting over." James took her hand. "I never asked you, starting over from what?" Maya was quiet for a moment. "I left my corporate job because I hated who I was becoming. Someone who stayed silent when things weren't right because speaking up wasn't convenient. Someone who prioritized comfort over conscience." She looked at her husband. "Running into Derek was horrible, but it also reminded me why I left. I didn't want to be the kind of person who watches injustice happen and does nothing. And now? Now I'm the kind of person who does something, Maya said. We both are. They sat together in the office, surrounded by the evidence of what they'd built, not just a successful restaurant, but a community. A place where people were valued for their humanity, not judged by superficial characteristics. A place where dignity wasn't a privilege but a guarantee. Outside, Portland's autumn rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean and reflecting the lights of the Crystal Garden, a beacon of warmth in the darkness, a promise that things could be better, a testament to the simple truth that respect costs nothing but means everything. And somewhere in the city, Derek Thornton sat alone, learning the hardest lesson of his life, that the person you diminish might be more important than you ever imagined, and by the time you realize your mistake, it's far too late to take back the damage you've caused.